Welcome to the Echo Essentials podcast. My name is Chris Pekarsky, and today is actually my last day at Echo as a full-time employee. So that's fun. But before we get into all of that, I have on the show with me today, you'll get to meet him very shortly, the new Director of Content and Client Strategy at the Echo Podcast Network, Isaac Sturkey. It's nice to kind of catch up with him and talk to him about a bit about himself and how he views storytelling, his skills and experience, obviously understanding the voices of the community in North Bay. We do a bit of a retrospective on some of our processes and how we've been able to talk about in the last couple months, shows, what we did right, what we maybe didn't do right. But I'll be handing the reins off to him as I will drive off into the sunset somewhere. I don't know, probably Northern Ontario. You'll see where I'm going. But I'll be around in some capacity. But I might be involved in the Essential show, but you'll hear more about this in a minute. But in terms of the overall direction of the network, I will leave that to our friend Isaac. So before we get to all of that, for those who didn't know, surprise, that's always fun. But give it a full listen. Let us know your thoughts. Before we get to all that, though, we do want to thank and throw it to our title sponsor of today's show, the North Bay Regional Health Center Foundation.
Dear North Bay, you've always been more than a place on the map. You're home to me. This is where I built a life with my husband, raised our kids, and taught in local schools for over 24 years. I'm proud to be part of this community. Earlier this year, my world shifted. After living with anxiety, depression, and PTSD for much of my life, I reached a point where I couldn't keep going alone. Walking into the emergency department at the North Bay Regional Health Center was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But what I found there changed everything. A nurse who made me feel safe, a crisis worker who truly listened. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. That care gave me hope, and it inspired me to give back by supporting local healthcare so that others in our community can access the same compassionate care I did. If my story resonates with you, I hope you'll consider supporting the NBRHC Foundation. Please visit nbrhcfoundation.ca or call 705-495-8125 to give. Because mental health is health. With gratitude, Tiffany Van Meer.
I am joined by my new colleague for one more day, Isaac Sturkey. Isaac, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
I'm very good, man. So first off, I'll explain what I just said, because I'm sure people are wondering, what does that mean? For those who've been paying attention to our socials or who just know my inner circle, I'm actually leaving Echo as the Director of Content and Client Strategy, and we've been very fortunate enough as a team to welcome Isaac into the fold. And so the last week or so, we've been kind of getting you up to speed. And today is meant to kind of serve as a intermediary episode to kind of explain, what the direction of the podcast is going to look like, my involvement, a lot about Isaac, just to kind of get a feel for, the change of the guard. So that's kind of what we're doing today. So it's going to be kind of a fun chit-chat conversation. There's no, heavy politics. We're not talking about PFAS today. We're not talking about the mayor today. We're not talking about Pierre Poilievre or anything like that today. We're going hyper micro in terms of what we're talking about locally at Echo here. So Isaac, thanks for joining, by the way. I know you said thank you already, but can you maybe tell our listeners a bit about yourself, like, who you are, where you're from, your background, your comms and, marketing experience? Just kind of give everyone a bit of experience on who you are.
Yeah, no, of course. So I've been in North Bay for a long time, I guess 33 years. I wasn't born here. I was born in, West Virginia, but I was raised in North Bay. So I've been here for a long time. I feel like I've just become a little bit of a, this is my place. This is my home. In terms of, experience and what I've done, as you know, but they might not, I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades. So my background is web development, graphic design, but, within that, I've done a lot in the marketing and advertising field. So I deal with a lot of clients, right? And I deal with a lot of, small businesses and, working in, marketing, advertisement, sales, and just really, building relationships with people and, helping them, build their businesses. So I've also worked in sales. I've done a lot of client management. So, when I saw this position, it just felt like something that just really, fit with me, and especially when you kind of mix in, the community aspect. That was just something that I kind of love the idea and the opportunity to, kind of extend what you've already been doing over here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I take full credit. I'm joking, obviously, but I mean, we know each other for a while, Isaac, and I mean, we live in the same neighborhood, and I see you around every now and again, and we had some conversations, and then like when we just recorded that reel with Kevin Hoffman here and the team with Clark to post the new position or post my position, it was funny for me because I was like recording my own posting, which is very surreal, but it was a great video. Shout out to Kev. But right after we shot that, I think I ran into you, and I was like, we're about to post something really cool. You should stay tuned for this. I think it fits your skill set. It fits your personality. It fits the way you kind of go about business. I want you to apply. And, we did a couple different interviews. We had a pretty decent net, but I was like, you know what? I think Isaac from the get-go is the right guy. We just have to get him in. And so we did. You vibe with the team. You met Ben. I'm sorry about that. You have to meet Ben. So, but it's been a fun week, man. It's been nice to have you in. But you said you're from North Bay. You went to high school here. Obviously.
Yeah. I went to Chippewa High School. Yeah, I played basketball there. I guess the Ravens now.
The Ravens now. Yes, we got to be very careful on that one. I get them right. And so we are the same age, and we've known each other from different different lines going through history here. But yeah, you have an awesome skill set. I've seen your portfolio. You know what you're doing. The visuals in Echo are going to get so much better, I'm sure. I've done what I can with Ben, and Ben's done an awesome job. But you bring a lot of unique experiences and some unique parts of the communications, content creation world that I think our listeners and viewers are really going to enjoy.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's going to be nice to, build off the foundation that's already there and, just kind of get things, into a little bit more of a, customer facing, a little bit more visually appealing. But, I think that you and Ben have done, a great job.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So for me, you talked about storytelling with us off camera, I believe. We talked probably 20 minutes before we started recording this, much to, again, Ben's chagrin. Just try to annoy Ben. It's always fun, which you will get really good at doing, I'm sure. But you talk about storytelling, and, a lot of what Echo is about sharing and amplifying local voices. And, bringing stories to, the forefront of our community and giving them a place to shine and be spotlighted in places where they used to have it but don't have it anymore. And so for you, I'm kind of curious to see what kind of stories you're looking at sharing, what you're looking at doing. What's your approach to storytelling in general, whether it's on your business side of things or how you view Echo?
So for me, I love the community aspect of Echo, right? I think that in terms of North Bay, that a lot of these, even small businesses and, even people don't really have a platform to kind of, share their story, to share their voice. So, I'd really like to kind of target some of the smaller businesses who might not have, accessibility to kind of, reach, a wider range in an audience.
Sure.
And, really kind of start to showcase just some of, North Bay and, some of the great people that have been around for a long time and have helped really, shape the city to be what it is today.
Yeah. And it's also, I'm just going to put an extra point and mark on that because I always get a little bit of pushback and crap from my partner, Jess, who's from a smaller town, but she always refers to North Bay as, is it really a city? It feels kind of like a town. I love that you called it a city. Yeah. I'm a big proponent of making sure that people know North Bay is a city, but it does have small community vibes, which is where the storytelling part becomes really interesting, right? And so props for that. Thank you for always calling North Bay a city. Don't forget it. It's a small city, but it's definitely a city. But there are so many unique pockets and communities and, whether it's small businesses, whether it's feel-good stories, there's lots of things that we want to cover. And there's a whole list of ideas and things that I've had written down that I'm giving to you to, whether you want to take it and run with it, that's up to you, right? Yeah. I mean, interestingly enough, you're going to be working with the team here to kind of craft some really interesting ideas. And so for Echo, I think this is a really good opportunity to kind of, take that next step. Because we've had an awesome couple months. We've been really happy with where we're going, and I think the best is still ahead of us. And so it's going to be interesting to see how you approach some of that storytelling. We still want to amplify local voices. People reach out to us, continue to do that, and do all those really unique opportunities to kind of help share those stories, right? So one of the stories that, we were looking at covering, and I haven't looped you on this one fully yet, but it's really interesting. I want to get you. This is not a trap, I promise you. This is not a hot button issue. But we want to talk a bit about the presence, recruitment, and impact of like local clubs and societies in the year of 2025. And so I spoke to a couple different local chapters, like the Legion, the Rotary clubs. I even had some conversations with, they're Freemasons even maybe. Like I had a couple different unique conversations with basically getting people in to have like a roundtable conversation about how their numbers have changed in the last, not just 10 years, but the last like 30 years. And like, is there a place? And if that place is there, what's it look like for the community to kind of find fellowship or community and like bonding? And it's really cool because it's definitely still possible for sure. It's not at all like time specific, but it's a really cool way to kind of get a peek behind the lens of like, post-COVID, have things changed? Do you have any experience in that world?
So not personally, but it's funny you do mention that because, I've looked around at, different clubs and stuff like that in North Bay because I think, there's not a ton going on in terms of like, getting out and kind of like, socializing all the time. And I think that these clubs can be a great way for people to get out and connect with, like-minded people and, kind of find their group, right? And like, have a sense of kind of fellowship. And, I would be curious to know, you talk about kind of the numbers for, people like new members and people joining. Like, have they seen a decline in those, over, the past, couple years? Or what's that looking like?
I mean, I can't speak to all of their unique experiences because I'm sure some have, higher highs and lower lows. But I think the general sentiment is that enrollment has been down. And whether that's because people are working more than they used to. People have tighter finances, so they have less money to kind of, or time to give back. I think they have taken a bit of a hit. And so, like, not that, like, for anyone wondering, like, we don't get paid to run stories. Every story that comes through us is created from here. Like, no one's telling us to make this story, but it's something that I thought about covering because Ben and I had a conversation. It was like, well, why don't we cover something like this? Because they don't feel like they get any kind of traction unless they, like, donate a check for their goodwill, something that they've done for fundraising. But yeah, I looked into a bit of it. Spoke to a couple of different, branch leaders, organizers, executive types, and they said, yeah, generally, our group is not as large as it used to be, especially like 15 years ago. But outreach in terms of being part of the group has also taken a bit of a hit since COVID, and things might turn up around because things have been, on the up and up since then. It's been. Oh my gosh, what year is this? 2025? Look at my watch. 2025. I think we're far from COVID, but the effects will kind of linger. And so kind of talking about some of those challenges and how do you modernize what might be kind of seen as like an old style of socializing. And it's interesting because like I won't give away like the Ruta story because we haven't recorded that yet. But I think it's a really cool kind of initiative because there's lots of good that they do, and there's a lot of like misunderstanding about how to become a partner of certain things. And I'm speaking this as an outsider. I'm not a member of any of them, but it's interesting just to kind of hear about like how each of them are kind of a little different, and how each of them have like a very different outlook to certain things. It's fascinating work.
No, it really is, and I think what you brought up was just kind of not necessarily maybe the declining numbers, but I think that maybe people don't even know about some of these clubs, right? Just because. Obviously the landscape of media has just changed so drastically over the past, 10 to 15 years. And some of these clubs I feel like might not be staying, kind of current with the times, right? Whether that be, advertising or like, posting on Facebook. And I think that, brand awareness is just one of those things that, I feel like our generation doesn't necessarily know about a lot of these clubs. Like, I wouldn't think about the Legion, I wouldn't think about, something like, even, the Freemason, stuff like that. But those might be groups that, I might be personally, interested. Yeah. But they just don't come to mind when I'm thinking of like, oh, what would be a nice place, go out and like, to meet some people, right? For me, I don't really think about going out and like, seeking it out in those places. So I think that, we've seen a pretty big shift in society and kind of even how we socialize. So I think the landscape's just changed, drastically over time.
It has changed. And, we'll get to the root of that story when we can get there. But I think the one thing that they definitely all kind of seem to resonate and echo, no pun intended, was that their enrollment base was getting older. Like their recruits weren't typically younger. Like I remember speaking to, oh my gosh, I think it was Rotary. Because the thing is, I have to be very careful because there's 2 Rotary clubs in North Bay. I have to be very particular how I get this right or wrong. I was speaking to one of them, the lead members, I believe, of Rotary North Bay. Oh, I hope I got that right. And he said like, Yeah, I mean, we'd like to recruit more. Like, we're the bigger Rotary chapter, but it's always a bit of a struggle to kind of communicate like to younger people why they should join this community. And it's interesting. So, I mean, we're gonna see how we can try to cover that, or what direction that you want to kind of go with. But there's lots of cool little stories that until you kind of like step out in the community, you don't really know about. And that's the fun part of this job that I think you're gonna have a lot of fun, pursuing. Is that with our 4 core shows. They each have a very unique audience. Now I'm speaking at Echo at large, even though this is Essentials, where they each have very different means of communicating with a certain public. And, what might be right for one show won't be right for another, and you're going to figure that out. And whether it's sports stories, whether it's environmental concerns or issues or political stories or fundraising, heroes, there's always something happening in our city because things do happen, even though we are older and we don't socialize the way we used to. There's something always happening.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that this is a really nice platform to, share with North Bay what's actually going on. I feel like a lot of people are outside of the loop for, kind of current events and kind of the political landscape and things like that. And I think that, having a show like this or, even having, a series of shows like this to kind of showcase and kind of educate what's going on and having that in a, bite-sized, presentable way that people, are willing to kind of consume that content is just a really great thing because not everyone wants to read the local news, right? But,
unfortunately, yeah.
Us having the ability to, break things down, finding the things that matter, finding the things that, people are interested in and finding the things that, people should know and being able to deliver that to them kind of where they are, I think is really important. And I think especially with, the way social media is here and like we don't get a lot of news on there, right? Not everyone wants to go to, the Beta Day or, the Nugget, they, word of mouth is how they usually, get their news. So I think, this platform overall in terms of kind of community building and, bringing the messages to people, I think it's a very important thing.
Yeah, it's a cool opportunity. I think, Ben and I always joke. We like to poke fun at like comment sections, but definitely Facebook groups. We've talked a bit about it. It's how like obviously with Meta, you can't share news articles to anything Instagram or Facebook, and like that's been the thing for a couple of years now. But that doesn't ever stop people from actually sharing something. So whether it's screenshots of articles or people just kvetching and ranting about a certain thing in like a North Bay complaint page, maybe not the most authentic form of grassroots journalism, people just venting off into the void. But you get a really good temperature check and pulse check on what people care about, especially in those places like comment sections, like social media activity. Because we might cover something that we find really interesting, but like, is it going to be interesting to the public, like our listenership? I don't know. We got to take that gamble.
Yeah.
But we like to think that we try to cover things that are of interest. And I know I'll speak just very candidly for a minute. When Dave Dale left the team, and when I came into the fold in the months that led up to him like leaving the show permanently as a host, even though he'll always be welcome back. We probably covered less city hall things like at the micro level because we wanted to talk a lot of things in bulk when we could. And obviously the big story to note was obviously the mayor's expense stuff, which we did cover recently. People were asking us casually, more or less like in person. So I don't have any like data to show you. There's no screenshots that I can put on the screen. But we would go to like a softball game and someone would be like, well, why aren't you covering the story? It's like, well, ultimately, even though we amplify the voices of journalists, we aren't journalists. And they're very busy covering that and other stories. And so we want to cover this story when it has a conclusion. Right. And so we kind of felt at odds with like, well, how do we cover it? When do we cover it? Who do we get in to cover it? And that's like a fun challenge, because like that's the way in which we frame and, we go through storytelling because we want to be as unbiased as possible. We want to make sure that we have different perspectives. But like sometimes you do have to take a bit of a stand. But I've always tried to make sure that when, I'm the host of the show and obviously, I was directing the content of the network, while Ben made it all pretty and fantastic, that we had a fairly balanced viewpoint. And it's hard because like some things you have to take a bit of a stance on sometimes, and sometimes you don't. But in terms of the whole network, that's going to be, no pressure. It's going to be your responsibility. It's going to be fun, and you're gonna feel like your creative juices will be flowing because another really fun part of it about this was like seeing what content sticks to you, and then obviously bouncing ideas off the team here and saying like, is this a good idea for a story? and they might say, well, here's this and here's that. And that's the joy of working with a team like Echo and Clark. And you get the benefit, but like, you're going to try to find like a very unique storytelling side of you. And, you have some storytelling experience in terms of like your marketing, business and your detail beyond that. But Echo is different because it's all audio. And you have to kind of figure out a way to prep yourself, and you do have to do a lot of homework. I feel like I'm like almost like trying to scare you. I'm not trying to scare you, Isaac, but you do your homework, and you make sure you have all the guests and the host prepped. And at this point in time, all of our hosts already know. The last people to know is the audience, honestly, unless there's a couple people I forgot, which I'm really sorry. I'll get back to you, I'm sure. But by the time this airs, you'll all know anyway. But it's gonna be fun. I think everyone has a different approach to storytelling, like I alluded to. Dave had a different approach to storytelling. All of our hosts do. Lisa, Bill, Ben and Jack, myself. And, as a content director, you have to figure out how they all kind of work into the cog of your vision with Echo and Ben at your side. And it's going to be really fun. It's going to be interesting to see like how you view storytelling.
Yeah, no, and I think I'm really excited, to kind of take on this challenge because, as you said, I do have a storytelling, experience, but not in podcasting, right? I've never, sat behind the mic. This is really, my first time. And, it's a little bit nerve-wracking, at first when you like, kind of look at it from the outside in. It's like, it's a lot of pressure, to come up with all these stories, get all these people together. But, I think that, like you say, like the stories come out themselves, right? And, you look, you find them. And I think it's just about really delivering, this message to, the people and, trying to, bring awareness for certain things.
It's almost that time of year. Early mornings at the rink, fresh notebooks and backpacks, and a community gearing up for another great season of varsity sports. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of it all. Whether it's finding your kid's first pair of skates, gearing up for tryouts, or outfitting your team for the season ahead, we've got you covered. Because here, we're not just a sports store, we're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to cheer you on every shift, step, and stride of the way. Visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street and let us help you along your way.
You'll just see like through booking guests and greeting people and helping operate the whole network that like one of the things I always talk about with Ben is that when you get someone, you book someone in, right? Like I remember, this is all a good story, so I'll amplify it. But when we brought in Dr. Zimbalati from the health unit, we brought her in to talk about measles, which is like, not like a light topic. People have opinions and it's people's lives and health and stuff. And, we gave her a lot of prep materials. We said, hey, we're going to ask some honest questions. We're going to ask what we can. We're going to try to get her data right. And you could tell, like, from my perspective, maybe I'm just like hyper analyzing, but like, it seemed like she was maybe unsure about the platform and she'd never been on a podcast before. And then eventually she kind of, was a little more comfortable. And after the episode recording, she was like, I'm really glad we did this. Thank you for letting us on and being able to talk about this. And that's the beauty of long form content, right? Is that you can have additional context. But I think it's about giving people a chance to kind of expand and talk about things that are more than just a headline, because even though we amplify journalism, we can also, help add to the narrative, right? And not so much that we're creating and breaking stories, but we're allowed to diversify and expand opinions and viewpoints. And for them, for Dr. Zimbalati and the crew at the health unit, I think they just relish that. Hopefully, they're always welcome back from as long as I can be here, obviously. But they do great work at the community, and I think they were thankful for the opportunity to kind of be here and talk about something that was obviously not just North Bay specific, but like Canada-wide, worldwide, which is interesting topic.
Yeah, no, and I think things like that are great too, because like you say, a little bit more than just a headline, right? Having people to come in who have the, professional experience, the expertise to really give the viewers and the listeners a little bit of a view from, an expert's point of view, right? Not necessarily just only the journalism, but sometimes it's nice to be able to have the more complicated, kind of complex, parts of a subject being broken down by someone who truly understands it. Because sometimes, education is really important, right? And, being educated on kind of these topics that are going on, especially something like measles, right?
Yeah.
Is like, to hear it from a journalistic point of view versus to hear it from, an actual doctor's point of view, it just kind of really, it brings validity to it, right? It brings, kind of that trust. So I think that, kind of in conjunction with the storytelling, mixing in kind of like, the viewpoints of, experts and bringing expertise into it is really a big, important component that I think that, should continue on with, Echo as a brand.
Oh, it's gonna. I can't imagine it wouldn't. I think, whether it's, personal anecdotes or, expert opinions, there's a place for both.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, now that I'm starting to recall unique stories, that episode was unique for a couple different ways. I had to get Ben to work a little bit harder on it because I got a stat wrong, and we had to kind of to fix it in post and to correct it to make sure that like I didn't say something that was wrong because I just didn't read my page right. Like obviously, write notes that are clean if you can. Don't scribble things that are obviously very important. But I didn't get a stat right, and so I had to get our producer, who's awesome, Ben, to do some work for us. But it's also a bit of like responsibility. Oddly enough, to make sure you get that stuff right, because like the last thing I wanted to do whenever I step onto the mic or when I became the director was like I don't want to do this irresponsibly, right? The last thing I want to do is do this very like cavalier and without any kind of protections or cautions or any kind of like respect to the work and the environment, because the last thing I want to do is become potentially that podcast or those podcasts where you just don't care about doing the homework, because you kind of have to. And thankfully, all of our other hosts do all the homework too. But it's fun. It's good work, but you really got to know. But thankfully, that's where the articles are there for, is that a lot of the journalists already do the homework for you. You just kind of have to do the briefing. Now that I'm thinking back on when I first got in here, my first, I stepped right into the fire. So I started technically on March 31st. I think I started recording, I think the end of the first week or the second week of April of 2025. And for those who understand kind of where we're going with this, we had to basically jump right headfirst into like the political sphere of the federal election. And I think my first episode recording was with, I believe, Dr. David Tabachnik, or it was me, him, and a friend of the show, Dave Dale, where we talked about previewing the entire federal election. And we were hoping at getting all the candidates in locally to talk. And that was a whole learning process in its own right. But I was like, okay, like I couldn't have possibly stepped in at a more, politically hotbed of conversation like a federal election where Trump was in the background looking over us. I was nervous, Isaac. I won't lie, man. Like I was a little scared because like last thing I want to do is like, oh man, I don't want to look like a fool on the show. But like you get over those worries and those fears, especially when you're booking. Let alone if you're going to be on mic is one thing, and that's your choice. But like booking shows is a different one. But when I was booking it and being on mic, I'm like, oh man, I cannot goof this up. I got to get this right because I don't want to look like a fool.
Yeah, no, and I think it's important too, like you say, to do your research and, everything in between, because really the responsibility lies on us to make sure that, we're telling the truth, right? And that we're, double checking, the facts that are even put out by other people to ensure that, the integrity of the show, kind of continues. So it does suck, but it's just, the research has to be done.
Yeah, so. I won't. I won't get into it. I can see Ben looking at me. We can't talk about specifics, but there was one episode where we had to do a bit of editing. We try not to edit this show as much as possible because we want it to be like raw, authentic, researched conversations. But there was one episode in the early days of me being here where we had to do some trimming down because it bordered on being, long-winded, obviously, which wasn't great for the ear. But it was full of stuff that like people couldn't refute, and so we had to do some editing on that front. And so we try to avoid doing that if we can. But we also have to be cognitively aware of like we're a platform and we have to make sure we get it right, which is the fun part because you get to see like the effects in the community when you become the director all on your own with Ben here when I'm gone. And you start making shows and you start feeling pride in your product and what you're doing for the network and the clients that you have here. You get the feedback back from the community, whether it's on the business or the listener side. And it's really cool because, you go in public, Ben always talks about it. Oh, you're the Echo guy. And it's like, Yeah, he is the Echo guy. Ben's been the heart of Echo since the beginning. But everyone in Echo has like a certain role to play. And it's fun to see kind of how the community kind of connects with you, even when you're off mic. Like the comment sections are one thing, you know, in the grocery store, aisle 4 is a different one.
Yeah.
And I think it's fun to see how people kind of respond to that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, when Ben mentioned that, I thought that was really cool, you know, because I guess going out and, you know, like he said, like, you know, you're recording in a room, you don't know who's seeing it, you know, so, you know, to go out and kind of see the, you know, impact of, you know, the messaging and to see that people are, you know, interested in, you know, what we have to say, I think that's a really cool aspect of it. And, you know, overall, just, you know, again, just having that platform to bring these messages, you know, to people because, you know, kind of going back again to what I was mentioning, just we consume media in a different way, right? People aren't really, we're not watching the local news, you know, people aren't going on to, you know, Beta Day, you know, the Nugget as much as, you know, they used to. So I think that, you know, finding people where they are and being able to deliver that message is just, it's such an important thing.
Yeah, I think it's still obviously, you know, I'll go ahead and promote our local journalist organizations. It's important to read those things, even though, you know, we might do it less collectively. I think it's important to get different viewpoints. So whether it's, you know, something like, you know, Nugget or Bay Today, CTV News Northern Ontario, you know, My North Bay Now, or local radio station, CBC Sudbury, things that have a play, Small Town Times, shout out to Dave. Things that have like a community beat here. You know, even if you don't necessarily like, you know, the opinion or, you know, the journalist or the topic or whatever, it's important to keep reading because I find, and you're going to, I mean, I think everyone kind of knows this. I keep talking about this, but like in my communications background, like I feel like a lot of people just never get past the headline. People will read the headline and they'll base an opinion and they will scroll down, but with 3 wheels down, and they will go to the comments and write something. And so many times I'll read an article. I'm like, hey man, like you didn't even read it. Like the answer you're looking for is literally in paragraph 4. You know, you just gotta go for it. But it's a different form of connecting with the community, and you know, we got to keep amplifying those voices, even the ones that don't get the media attention, which is really interesting. Which is what we talked about, you know, last week. Even though I say last week, it was a couple of days ago, regarding the PFAS in North Bay's drinking water source, Trout Lake. You know, they get a bit of media bump, but they talked about how they aren't getting enough and people aren't talking about it. And, you know, I know it's a bit of a, well, should I care situation? I can't see it. Is it really hurting me? Is the science there? Well, a lot of things would say otherwise in both of those, in a lot of those regards. You know, they're not getting the same kind of coverage as, you know, a $16,000 credit card scandal, whereas this is probably having a greater scope of effect on people long-term chronically than something like, you know, a bad credit card run for one of our city officials, right? It's interesting to see what people in our community care about, and what's like a really hotbed issue. Because I think both those things are important. Let's make no mistake. I care about both those things, but the amount of ire and passion when it comes to what people feel personally, you know, when reading local stories and when championing local voices, you'll be shocked because some things will be like, I feel really strong about this, and it's like a, you know, kind of a feel good story amongst the timeline when it should be something like people should care about, and then you get a lot of feedback to cover something else, then you just can't cover. It's interesting to see what people care about, ultimately, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you 100%. And I think, you know, this is obviously my personal opinion, but I think sometimes it's hard when you're looking at these, you know, hot button topics, especially the ones that are hard to quantify, right? You know, when we talk about, you know, PFAS and we talk about, you know, the implications, you know, your average person doesn't necessarily understand, you know, the long-term effects, you know, downstream, but to look at something like, you know,
nice.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah, well done, sir. Yeah. Well done.
But when you look at something like a, you know, let's say, you know, $16,000, you know, credit card bill, you know, or something like that, you know, I can look at that and I can immediately like, okay, no, this is what this is, right? And I think, you know, that's where education and having, you know, expertise comes into play to, you know, help educate people as well. And I think that that's, you know, the importance of, you know, not only telling the story, but telling the story from, you know, different perspectives and, you know, adding in, you know, all the components, you know, in all the pieces with it as well. So
it's fun. It's definitely a puzzle, dude. Like you're gonna have fun booking shows, and so we'll get into, before we get into like, you know, where I'm going and how I'm gonna be involved in the loop, if I'm gonna be involved in the loop, which is a tease, obviously, for our own episode. You're listening already. Is there any like certain stories or persons that you want to put on mic? Now I'll put you on the spot. You know, whether it's for any of our 4 shows, but if it's like something more vague or general, is there something that you feel like the city should talk more about and that Echo can amplify as a story, as a person, or as like a series of events? Is there something that you want to cover from just being here for about 4 days?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say off the top of my head, there's like a ton of stuff that like, I'm like, oh, okay, this could be really good. There's people that have come to mind, and there's, even like, businesses or, institutions inside North Bay. But, I like the idea of even like some of the like things like, the gallery downtown. We have the new makerspace that's downtown as well.
Yeah. Good point.
So I think like, just kind of some of these places that aren't really reaching people, and that are doing good things within the city. I think it'd be really cool to kind of have some of these people in just to, talk a little bit more about what they do and, even how maybe people can get kind of involved with these things. Because they're not getting out there enough.
Fair. And that's what I talk about each show a little independently. I loved working with Lisa Beauvais, host of North Bay with Love. She's been awesome for that front about talking about, pockets of communities and scenes that don't get the kind of love. And Ben's been great to support her on that before and after I've been here. That's a cool show because, there's less politically associated to it, and it's really about amplifying those good stories. And she's been doing it for, I believe, over 2 years now. And it's been an awesome show. Like it's fun when you get into boardrooms and you talk to people. The show that I hear about the most, depending on the boardroom, in the boardroom specifically, it's going to be North Bay with Love. People love that show. It's been around for a while. You get into socials, that's definitely sportscast. But I mean, every pocket community has their favorite show, and sometimes it's going to maybe help amplify them come back around. Because you've gotten people who have been fans of the show, and we brought them in, and now they became part of the show, and that's cool too. Because they're like, I never thought I'd be on the show. I've never done a podcast before. I would assume most people haven't done a podcast before, but we're changing that slowly. But I like what you said. There's a couple of things downtown that we can kind of help amplify, and there's so many different ideas that we have written down still that we're still going to look at covering, and that with your direction they're going to do just fine with doing. But I guess I can talk a little bit about where I'm going to go next, what's happening with me. No, I'm not being fired, for anyone wondering. I didn't fire myself. I was fortunate enough that I was approached with an opportunity to join the community relations team at Agnico Eagle, and so I've been working with a couple of friends there, helping with the communities in the Northern Ontario area to kind of help facilitate some of the conversations between the company and the community stakeholders that are there, including Indigenous communities, municipalities, environmental protection groups, things of the like. So it's a very interesting job. It's a different job than Echo. I'm going to miss doing the content direction of Echo, especially. But it's a new opportunity for me. It was the right time. And obviously Echo's hitting its stride right now. I have no doubts that it's gonna be just fine without me. But it's gonna be fun to see, Echo from now that I've been on the inside. Now I get to view it from the outside, and that's kind of fun too.
Yeah, I think that will be actually pretty cool for you to kind of see, because you won't know what's coming, next per se.
It'll be a surprise to me.
Yeah, so and like you mentioned, you'll be on the road some, so you'll get to listen to the show, and you'll get to see it from a viewer's point of view. It'll be a little bit of a surprise for you every week. We'll have to keep you out of the loop a little bit, I think.
Yeah, keep me in the dark, man. Yeah. Lose my number.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. But you're right. I'll be on the road a little bit occasionally. I'll still be living in North Bay. That part of my life isn't going to change for the current foreseeable future. It was just right for me and my family and my circle. And so I will be listening to a lot more because I will have some long drives to and fro. But my first episodes that I put on will be Echo, of course. Got to support the team. But there's certain capacities in which I will hopefully try to be involved with, and we're still trying to figure out the logistics of that and how that looks for me and how I can obviously help you guys. But I still want to remain part of the show and the crew however I can. I just obviously won't be the point of contact for booking shows, client presentations, community outreach. That's going to be you, Isaac. And so for anyone listening, just make note of that. I might be on the show from time to time for essentials. But Isaac is the point lead, and Ben is obviously the content, beautifier, the lead in that front, being our producer. So it's fun next steps. I'm going to be keeping tabs as a listener, and obviously working with however I can and being part of the show. But it's exciting, man. It's funny. I knew about Echo before. I mean, I've been tracking the team at Clark here for many years, being a communications professional. And then when I was able to connect the dots, I'm like, oh, Echo's, connected, however, operating very much independent of its own right. They're connected. And I was like, this is neat. Like, this is a really cool thing that, from an agency that I've been a big fan of for a while. It's cool to see like, how they complement each other. And I think Echo's in a unique place to kind of really continue to do its own thing. And I think it's really cool. The next chapter is going to be exciting, and I don't know what's going to be written on the page, but it's going to have both your pens on it, and it's going to be cool to see.
Yeah, and you won't know until you see the episode.
That's
so
true.
Keep that in mind.
That's true. Please do not. Obviously, I joke with the team here. You're always welcome to reach out to me for any kind of advice. I will be making sure that every in the community section of our YouTube studio page, I will be a comment on every episode just to annoy Ben, just to give you guys engagement. He nods his head. But no, I'm going to try to figure out how I can stay, involved to a certain degree. But the last thing I ever want to do, and make sure, I'll make this very clear, like I want you guys to steer the ship you've done. So Ben's been Echo before I got here, and he's still going to be this. And you guys have a unique opportunity to kind of, work as a great team and work with the team here and work with the hosts and connect with the community to really do some great work. And so I'll be there to help complement and support, but I will not be leading. I'm leaving it in your two capable hands to do what's best. And you guys gonna be great. So I'm really excited for you guys. So before we get out of here, is there anything that we want to kind of address to the audience here, Isaac, Ben? Is there anything you want to kind of talk about?
I think you covered it all. That's the thing. You're naturally such a great host. You spoke so much. I was worried about having to talk, but you took up the majority of the space. I can't complain. I really can't.
I think we call that a backhanded compliment.
What? Yeah. Compliment is strong, but no, no, you are a great host. And
you're kind, Isaac.
And again, we've talked a little bit about potentially you continuing to maybe host and have that spot, and that'd be great because I think you've done such a good job with doing it up till now. I feel like you're a little bit of the face of Echo Essentials.
Thank
truly.
you.
So
thank you. That's very kind.
I do hope that you're able to make some time, or we can work something out where at the very least we have you making some regular scheduled appearances on the show. So.
Yeah, thank you. And this is, I'm assuming, I can't speak for yourself, but this is probably the last time you're going to be seeing Isaac in any capacity of the Echo Essentials show. You'll see his fingerprints throughout Echo Network at large. But you'll be dipping your toes in, getting a feel for how you want to appear and stuff. And that'll be fun too, to kind of feel like your balance of off camera, on camera kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, exactly. And if I got to hop on it, it's not too bad once I'm on here. I do enjoy it because I love to talk, right? I'm really looking forward to the next steps and where we're going to take Echo. And you've really left behind everything in great working order. So
thanks, man. I appreciate that. You guys are gonna go on like a Jordan-like run here. You're gonna go six total, 3-3. But you guys are gonna do great. I've been very fortunate to be part of the Echo team for the last 7.5, 8 months. It feels very brief, which is I wish it was longer. I love doing this job. You're going to love doing this job. It's a blast. I can't speak more highly of the people here and the work that we've done. But yeah, it's going to be fun, man. I can't wait for you guys to, really take it on and take it in a new direction. It's going to be fun to see. And I will be watching and listening. So for those who don't know, obviously, if you haven't checked out the show on YouTube, all of our 4 core shows are on YouTube as well. And wherever you get your wherever you get your podcast, that includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We push things through iHeart, all through Speaker. Go listen to our shows. Like if you don't want to put the bandwidth, oh my God, dropped bandwidth on the episode, to watch an episode, listen to it instead. You can download it. Check out our website too. Now that we're getting all the call to actions here. Read our newsletter. Check out the newsletter and how that's going to take shape in the future to get not just community beats, but all things related to Echo. So you can kind of stay tuned on future content direction and what's going on, and just stay tuned because there's lots of good content left to be had, and I can't wait for you guys to tell it. So Isaac, thank you for joining me. I don't know when you'll see me next, but this is going to be airing next week. So by the time this already airs, I will be gone. I will be a ghost. But whoever is going to be on the mic, I hope they talk as much as I do, because it seems like I like to talk and hear myself talk. But either way, Isaac, it's been a pleasure, man. Good luck in your future spot. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening or watching the Echo Essentials podcast. My name, as always, is Chris Pekarski. Let us know what you thought about the episode. Feel free to share a like, share the episode itself, leave a comment, subscribe to our Echo Essentials newsletter as well, of course. Stay on top of all things Echo and North Bay, and let us know what you thought about this and all the other topics that we've talked about or is going on in the community in the comment section. Thanks so much.